Hi all! Thank you for joining me for our first Right Now workshop with author Julia Walton. My name is Emily Derry and I am the Youth Engagement Coordinator for the San Diego Public Library. This program is supported by Words Alive, the San Diego Public Library, and the Friends of the Library. Before I hand Julia Walton the mic, I want to briefly explain the Right Now program and what is coming in the next few weeks. So each week in October, we will post a video with a new writing prompt from a published author. These videos are meant to inspire you to try different types of writing. You'll find the videos on the Words Alive website, which I put in the chat. Julia's prompt is up now, and over the next few weeks, you'll find prompts from authors Alan Gratz, Susan Meissner, and Karina Lukin. If these prompts inspire you to write something that you'd like to share, you can submit it on the Right Now website, and you can be entered into a raffle to receive a signed copy of Julia's book, Words on Bathroom Walls, and some other fun prizes donated by Julia, and books by the other 3 participating authors in this workshop series. And be sure to register for author Susan Meissner's workshop on October 19th at 3 p.m. Okay, so let's get started. I'm so honored to introduce Julia Walton. Julia is the author of the award-winning book Words on Bathroom Walls, which was the International Literacy Association Young Adults Book Award winner. She received her master's in fine arts and creative writing from Chapman University and lives just up the coast a bit in Huntington Beach. Julia, I was wondering if you could get us started by introducing your book and reading an excerpt for us. Afterwards, we will workshop and discuss pieces of writing, specific pieces of writing, and share experiences with the publishing process. Oh, and for participants, if you have any questions for Julia, feel free to type them in the chat, and Julia, I will monitor that for you. Excellent. So Julia, thank you for being with us today. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you. I know it's been a rough couple months for a lot of people. So, and actually for everybody, I think it's been a little bit of an adjustment. So I really appreciate you guys, taking the time to listen and chat with me today. So here's my book, Words on Bathroom Walls. And here is the new movie cover. And I'll chat a little bit about that in a bit. But first, like Emily said, I'm going to get started by reading the excerpt in chapter 27. So if you'd like to read along with me, I will start. Actually, I'll start at the beginning of the chapter because it's not super long, and I think this gives you kind of a flavor for Adam's voice. And it's actually a scene that they highlighted in the film. So I was really happy that they chose to include it because it was I think some very good commentary and something that I was really happy with. So let's get started. And chapter 27, dosage, 5 milligrams, increased dosage. March 13th, 2013. Doc, I should start this by saying you've looked really tired these last couple of weeks. I don't know what's going on at home or if my therapy sessions have become more exhausting for you than normal, but you should really get some sleep. Your eyes are all bloodshot and you look like hell. I assume that you already know what the other doctors said. The tests were inconclusive, so they're running them again. But they basically told us the drug might be doing more damage than good. Adam, we've been monitoring and motivating radical changes, and unfortunately, though there were positive signs to begin with, it does not appear that you will be a good candidate for this treatment long term. It would be detrimental to the study to have to continue using your data because even though you have not reverted to your previous state, you have already exhibited signs of resistance to the drug. We will begin tapering you off to lower doses. It was sort of harsh the way they told me about it. Detrimental to the study, like I was a lab rat. They didn't tell me this the way they'd tell a patient with cancer that chemo isn't going to work because cancer is sexy. I don't mean that it's better than schizophrenia or that people who have it are sexier than people who have anything else, or that cancer is actually sexy, obviously. I mean that cancer patients don't frighten anyone. When you have cancer, people are sympathetic. They feel something for you, and people even hold races to raise money for your cure. It's different when people are afraid of what you've got, because then you've got some of the sympathy, but none of the support. They don't wish you ill. They just want you as far away from them as possible. Cancer Kid has the Make-A-Wish Foundation, because Cancer Kid will eventually die, and that's sad. Schizophrenia kid will also eventually die, but before he does, he will be over-medicated with a plethora of drugs. He will alienate everyone he's ever really cared about, and he will most likely wind up on the street living with a cat that will eat him when he dies. This is also sad, but nobody gives him a wish because he isn't actively dying. It's abundantly clear that we only care about sick people who are dying tragic, time-sensitive deaths. I got nervous when the doctor told me they might take me off the drug. Mom says they aren't going to do anything hasty, and we're still going to find a medication that does everything I need it to do. But I think she was just trying to keep me calm. She was trying to say the things she knew would make me feel better, because that's what moms do. But I was still nervous. And sometimes when I get nervous, I try to do things that aren't always a good idea. I started with the weird skin around my cuticle, the stuff that looked like frayed pieces of string cheese. I pulled at it. When I saw red flesh and the blood underneath, I kept going because it was the kind of pain that felt satisfying, like the time I pulled out 3 baby teeth when they weren't even loose because it felt good to pull them. I mean, it hurt, but in a good way, like the way sucking a canker sore feels good. So I pulled the cuticle skin up to the first knuckle, and that's when I stopped because I was bleeding a lot, and I knew it wouldn't be able to hide anything worse than that. My mom would know what I'd done if I had anything more than a Band-Aid on my finger. She always knew when there was something off, even if she can't remember where she left her cell phone. A Band-Aid wouldn't draw attention. It would make me lose my kitchen knife. It wouldn't make me lose my kitchen knife privileges. I'm not sure it was just the possibility of being taken off the drug that made me nervous. I'd also seen someone at the grocery store a few days ago, someone I hadn't seen in more than a year. Remember Todd, the old best friend I told you about? He lives a few streets over from my house, and in kindergarten we both had the same Batman lunchbox. We used to ride our bikes together. Back when I was first diagnosed a year and a half ago, I told him everything. For a few days after that, he was still my best friend. He didn't act like anything was different. Then my mom got a call from his mom. I couldn't tell what his mom was saying, but my mom was using language I couldn't believe. She listened to Todd's mom for a few seconds and then said, "He is nothing to be afraid of." Her words came out of her like a low, dangerous hiss, and when she hung up, she was shaking. I was in the hall when this happened, just watching her through a crack in the door. We didn't talk about it after it happened. I just suddenly understood that I wouldn't be seeing Todd anymore. But anyway, there he was in the grocery store. I didn't notice him at first. Rebecca did. I just sort of followed her gaze to where he was standing next to the breakfast foods. He was twirling the keys to his mom's Acura around his finger in a distracted sort of way while he looked at cereal. So that meant he already had his license and he was running errands. He pretty much looked the same. He'd started growing a beard. If we were still friends, I would have told him it looked like his chin was growing mold, but we weren't, so I didn't. He was wearing a weird anime t-shirt from some obscure Japanese cartoon, and he had an open bag of gummy bears propped on the child seat of his grocery cart. It always bugs me when people eat things in the grocery store before buying them. The last time I saw him, he'd acted like nothing was wrong. We talked about the stuff we normally talk about and played video games, but after that phone call from his mom, I stopped seeing him. I secretly hoped that it was his mom who'd made him stop coming over, but Todd always did stuff his mom didn't like. He hid candy under his floorboards in his bedroom because his mom wouldn't let him have processed sugar, and he snuck out of the house all the time. He bought Playboys. I'd seen him smoke weed, so it wasn't because of her. As I stood there, I made a list of all the stuff I wanted to say to him, every snarky thing that ever crossed my mind about him. But then Rebecca just looked at me and shook her head. She raised her middle finger in Todd's direction, and I smiled. I got into a checkout line and left with the 4 items I needed. I know he saw me before I left because there were only 3 people behind me in line. I'm pretty conspicuous. He knew it was me. He definitely knew. I turned around for a second when I got to the exit and noticed that Todd was deliberately looking away. He didn't want to make eye contact, so I left and didn't tell anyone I'd seen him. Definitely not Maya, because I would have had to tell her why we weren't friends anymore. I wonder if someday he'll tell people that he had a friend who was schizophrenic and that it was too difficult to maintain the relationship because of the severity of the illness. He might get a few sad nods and even some sympathy from strangers who he was trying. I thought about keying Mom's Acura in the parking lot for a second and then just walked home instead. Rebecca did cartwheels. So that is chapter 27. And they did spotlight the cancer kid section in the film, and I was really happy that they did that because it does, I think, bring up a lot of good discussion, I think, surrounding mental illness and why it's important to include stories about mental illness and to talk about it. And especially now during the pandemic, when mental health is so important and is so important to discuss, I think stories like this matter. And getting as many stories about teenagers, about people with mental illness is important because they do, I think they really do change minds. But let's talk a little bit about the letter format of the novel. So it's funny because when I started writing the book, I didn't intend to write an epistolary novel completely from letters. That's the way that it kind of just poured out of me. But so the very first time that I sat down, the very first chapter, just flew out of me at my cubicle in my insurance job when I was supposed to be doing other things. And I was able to outline the rest of the story using letters. And the thing that I started with this chapter at the beginning of every section, of every moment that I wanted to create within the novel was a question. So it made it easier to get the entire novel outlined if I had a question for every part of the story. So at the beginning, the first couple chapters were the easy questions, were questions like, who are you? Who are you? Where do you live? What's your story? And then and then because this is specific to schizophrenia, it would be, when did you know, or what were the earliest signs that something was different or something felt off? And then it works for, I think, any kind of story to outline in questions and to outline in letter form, because you give yourself the opportunity to answer in their voice. So you learn even more about the character. And I'm not always an outliner, but for this novel I was, and it was really easy to set up the questions within the letters, because then they're answering first person, and it felt very natural. So I think that whenever I did workshops for other classes, and whenever I talked to people who were just getting started with writing, I always encouraged them to set up questions that you wanted answered as a reader, so that as a writer, when you dive into the character, you're answering naturally and you kind of immerse yourself in that character. And it makes it more fun, I think, if you put yourself in the place of that character and start answering the questions that way. And I think we have a question, but I'm not. No? Oh, okay, cool.
No, I had just typed out, actually, yeah, it just appeared for me. I had just said that was a powerful chapter. I remember reading that, and I really, to hear that coming from Adam, how he is looking at the way that people perceive mental illness versus something like a disease like cancer, I thought you really addressed that really well. So I'm glad that you chose that piece today.
Thank you.
Marika wrote, I've always heard that writers should write about they know. How much did you know about schizophrenia, and how much research did you have to do?
I had to do all the research. So it was like everything that I know about it was what I researched when I first got the idea for the story. So I dove into library material. Actually, I lived at the library for a while. When I first started researching, I got handbooks about from the perspective of family members learning to help other family members with the illness. I read medical articles, I read medical journals. One of my earliest beta readers actually had the illness and was able to tell me if my first chapter felt like it was authentic and felt like it was something that was relatable and understandable and was within the realm of possibility. But I did create the drug itself based on other drugs that are on right now and that doctors are currently prescribing for schizophrenia. But when I created the drug Tozoprex, I tried to create it so that it would minimize all of the other side effects. But then ultimately, Adam would still, like, the arc of the story was that he would ultimately still struggle with the drug. And I mean, at some point during the story. So, but I did base it on other drugs that are very real and very much being used today. And let's see.
I have another question here from Zoe. Did you have to make a conscious effort to create Adam's voice in the letters and make it different from your own writing voice?
That's a really awesome question. You know what? I don't even know how to answer that. I think to answer that is no, it wasn't a conscious effort. I think he is a little bit different than my own writing voice. but it wasn't something that I said, oh no, I have to be Adam, and I have to be a teenage boy, and I have to be really, like, I have to be angry about this, and I have to be okay about this part. It wasn't a conscious effort. I really did put myself into his mind, I think, is I created him thinking about how I would feel under the same circumstances. And it is different than my regular writing voice when I'm not writing first person and I'm not writing it from his perspective. But there's a lot of me in Adam. There's a lot of the snarkiness that comes out, like when I'm talking to people and when I'm, commenting on day-to-day life. And a lot of Adam's experiences, not the schizophrenia portion, but a lot of Adam's experiences, like the Catholic school and the academic team, those were from my own experience. So I was able to draw from that. And I think that made it feel a little bit more, natural. It helped to get the story completely out. And I think I was able to do it more easily because I was drawing a little bit from my own experience in that regard.
And then question, so were you doing research while simultaneously, I can't say the word, simultaneously writing the story, or did you have to do the research first?
For some sections, I had to do the research first. Like it was, I wrote the way that I write, or the way that I wrote this story was that I wrote all of the letters from the beginning to end in the way that I wanted the story to progress. I did research as I went to make sure that I had everything that needed to be addressed in the right spot, but then I went back in and researched certain things even further. So the research was done, I think, in different waves, like through different drafts. So the first draft, I did my first wave of research. And then when I noticed that there were some things missing, I would go back and add more depending on questions that I had on my own, questions that my beta readers had, and then ultimately questions that my agent and that my editor had. So it was all done in waves throughout. I think so. I think I would have to say that it was simultaneously. Like it wasn't just like, okay, here's my chunk of research and now I'm going to write the novel. I think there were pieces of it that I did as I was going along. So I hope that answers the question and that I didn't ramble that, but that's how it worked out. And
thank you, Julia. That sounded good to me. Were you doing research while, oh wait, I already read that one. So from here, writers usually draw inspiration for characters from people from real life. Did you also follow this norm?
Yeah, I don't always do that for every story that I write, but for this story, I for sure did that. Like it was, Adam is there's a lot of me in Adam. Like at the time, I was definitely using baking as like a therapeutic coping mechanism for life when I was trapped in a job that I hated. And I know obviously he was using it for more serious reasons, but I also gave him that because it felt fun and it felt natural and it felt like a lovely relief to be able to give him something I enjoyed at the time, and that helped me. So the baking, the Catholic school experience, the academic team experience, but as far as the inspiration for characters, I always say that my husband, his character, or some of his personality traits were definitely present in Maya. There's even a line in the film where Adam teases her for being a robot, and I have said that to my husband probably daily since I've known him. So it's like that is a real moment for sure. And yeah, I have to say that I definitely did draw inspiration from characters in real life, from people that I knew or people that I know. And I'll probably, in some respects, I'll probably do that forever, just because it's a natural thing to, when you create something, and you even when you create little things that someone does, like the way that they hold a pencil, the way that they walk, the way they look at something, you mirror it after things that you've seen in real life, even if you don't know the person, even if it's somebody that you've just seen like at a Starbucks or somebody waiting in line. That's pretty natural. And yeah, I followed this norm for this story.
You may have said this in the beginning, but I might have missed it. Did you know from the beginning when you started thinking about Adam and this and and writing Adam with schizophrenia, did you know right away that letter writing was going to be your method, or did that kind of come, like, did you know right away that that was going to be a good platform for this story, or did that kind of come after some brainstorming and some?
That portion came right away. Like the first chapter was written as a rant in my cubicle, and it was written as a letter to someone, and I didn't know all the details yet, and I didn't know who it was written to, but I knew it was a letter. And then after I continue going with this, because it is so liberating to write this story this way, as feels like a conversation to someone. Mm-hmm. And the way that the story progressed was, that Adam didn't want to speak during his therapy sessions. He just wanted to write, and he wanted to write everything down. And it just felt right from the beginning. Like, I didn't know all the details, and I didn't quite know yet who I was speaking to when I first sat down to write it, but letters were the first thing that I turned to. And I'm not sure why. That just worked out that way.
Okay, we have another question. How involved were you, I like this, in the making of the movie? I've been thinking a lot about the movie part of it too, like just how that works and how they work with you on that. So thank you for asking that, Marika.
So that's a really good question, but it's different for everybody. There are some authors who are very, very involved, like from being involved in writing the screenplay, from being involved as far as consulting from the very beginning. There were some, like at the very beginning, I was not involved with, I knew when there was movie interest. My agent told me that there was some interest from a screenwriter and director who wanted to make it into a film. But in the beginning, she said, don't get your hopes up. Don't think too much into this. It's just something that sometimes they do. So don't freak out or anything. So I said, okay. A few months go by, nothing. And then she said, there's still some interest, but don't freak out yet. We don't know if anything's happening. And that's what they do. They try to keep your expectations low. And I didn't know anything about the progress until probably a year after the screenwriter had read it and was already drafting a screenplay, or was already drafting the script. And that's when I got the call that they were thinking about greenlighting it and getting everyone together and to start casting for the film. And I met with the screenwriter after he had finished the first draft and submitted it to LD Entertainment. And he told me how much that he loved the story, and he asked me to take a look at what he had submitted. And that's when I saw the script, and I loved the changes that he had made, and I loved that, and I loved all the scenes that he had included, and even the things that deviated from the book I thought were really good changes, and were really important changes that he made to make it a more visual experience. I think he was able to really capture the heart of the novel. But as far as me directly in the making of the movie, I wasn't on set or anything, because at the time I had a 5-month-old, and it wasn't super easy for me to fly to where they were filming. But I did get a pretty cool call while they were filming from Andy Garcia about asking, not from Andy Garcia, but from the screenwriter who had spoken to Andy Garcia about the priest character that he was playing, Father Patrick, and he was asking for more specifics. So that was pretty cool. But it is different for everyone. It's different for every writer who goes through this process. Some people are heavily involved from the very beginning, and some people are not. They are more in the shadows, but more in the background, and they kind of the production companies or the director or screenwriter will reach out when they need to.
So that made me think, what did you have? I mean, it didn't sound like you needed any, but did you have any authority to say that you didn't like something that was changed, if you had? Or even from the beginning, would you have been able to say, I don't want my book to be made into a movie? And I don't know why anybody would say that, but I'm just wondering if that is part of, if you have those rights, or if that kind of belongs to the publisher.
No, it doesn't belong to the publisher. It definitely belongs to me. In the very beginning, when you sell, like what happens is you sell the, oh shoot, I'm going to get the words wrong now, but you make the sale for the rights, and they are allowed to hold on to those for a certain period of time. And if they don't make the film within that certain period of time, then they can renew the rights to make the film, and you can continue to get, paid for that. Until they decide whether or not they want to drop the rights or continue to, pursue that. Oh shoot, the question was about, I just lost my complete
It's
train
okay.
of
I
thought.
just was asking, if you would have been able to say,
Yes, I'm sorry.
the screenwriter had changed something that you didn't like, or you didn't think portrayed Adam in the way you felt it needed to be, or whatever. Yeah.
In the beginning, you can make a few stipulations, which I did when we did sell the rights. I said, I don't want, at the time I had noticed some kind of unsettling trends with a few films. I didn't want Maya to be whitewashed. I didn't want her character to be removed. So I remember telling them, like, please find a Filipino character or a character of color. I don't want it to be removed, because I felt like that was an important part of her character in the novel. But they were awesome. They cast Taylor Russell for Maya, and she's awesome. So everything. I wasn't part of the casting, but I think it was so well done. Just amazing. Everyone was so talented. And
when did you know that you wanted to write as a career? So maybe we're getting into a little bit of the publishing.
Yeah.
We can start, that's a good kind of segue to start talking about that. And we can always go back to Words on Bathroom Walls too, and just have a conversation. But when did you know that you wanted to write as a career?
So in third grade, we had to do what you want to be when you grow up. And I had it was either, I think it was the summer before that, when I had read every Roald Dahl book that there was, like, at the time. And then someone had told me that you can do that. You can do that as a career. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. That's all that I want to do. But and I got a job in insurance, and I got a job doing grown-up things. And sometimes the world tries to squash those dreams a little bit. I started getting this feeling as an adult, and when I was in college and as an adult, that writing was something that other people did, and that was something that you needed. I don't know, you needed to be a certain kind of person to write. You had to be, I don't know, I just thought it felt like it was beyond me. It felt like for some reason, I had it in my head that it was something that I couldn't do. And the thing about that is, the minute that thought enters your head and you start believing it, of course it's not something that you can do, because you're putting those thoughts in your own head and you're starting to build on that feeling of insecurity. But I still loved writing, and I was still doing it. I think I got to a point in that job that I hated, that I told you about, where I said, I'm just going to do it anyway, and they're going to start rejecting me if they want to reject me, and I'm going to keep writing because it's something that I love. So, and it's something that I feel like it gives me purpose. So I kept doing it, and I wrote 3 books that went nowhere, absolutely nowhere. They were terrible. They went in all different directions. Like, the character development was skewed. Everything was not the way it should be, but they taught me a lot about writing, and the mistakes that I made in those books were super important, because if I hadn't made those, then I wouldn't have been able to write this one, and I wouldn't have learned how to create the characters for this book and the things that I needed to move forward as a writer. So I knew that I wanted to write very young, but I let doubt, and I let other people's comments about, oh, is that you should be doing, is that something that's really, stable, and is that something that's, and I let those thoughts creep into my head without and kind of let them take over for a while. So I would recommend that if you want to write, do it. But don't quit like your day job. That's important to have. Don't run out there and say, I'm just going to be a struggling artist. No, you got to keep your day job, and it will take a little bit of time, but don't lose sight of the things that make you feel alive and the things that make you happy, because those are so important. And eventually, what's going to happen is those things are going to make you feel a certain way about other things that you're doing, and you don't know how these things are going to work out, and you don't know how long it's going to take or where it's going to lead you. But I can assure you that if you point yourself in the direction of the things that you love and the things that matter to you and the things that make you feel alive, then you can't go wrong with that. That was a long
I like how you mentioned the don't quit your day job thing, because I think that, that takes off the pressure too. Like if you know you're getting the steady paycheck, you're able to survive, then you're not going to be sitting there being like, I have to make this book right. I have to do this right. I have to get this, has to be published by this date or else I can't pay my rent, right? You have to be able to kind of put them in compartments. Like, okay, I'm doing this over here, and then this is what I'm doing that I love. And if it goes somewhere, great. And then, so I'm curious, you said that there were 3 books that went nowhere. Did you try to publish those, or did you know, like, okay, these are practice writings, or did you send them out to all the publishers?
Oh, no. So, yeah, that's a really good question. So, I, the first couple I did not. I did query my 3rd novel because I was just starting to get there, but the problem was that I was writing a lot of fantasy stuff at the time, and I was copying other writers' styles, and I was looking at, like, sometimes what you do is you find writers and stories that you love, and you kind of pitch you hit yourself to them, and you try to create stories as an homage to their creations. And it wasn't working out. And my husband turns to me, and he's very robotic and very much like, I always tease him. I always tell him he's Spock from Star Trek. And because he's very logical, everything is logical. Everything has a place and a moment. And he looks at me and he goes, why don't you try starting with something real? And I was mad at him at the time because I said, I'm like, you're not a writer. You don't know anything. And then I thought about it and went, shoot. He's probably right. Maybe I should start with something real and then go and see where that story takes me. And I did. And he was right. And it did. It worked out. I was able to start actually drafting a real story when I started with something real. And that's not to say I won't dive back into fantasy at some point with the experience that I have. But yeah, that was helpful at the time.
Yeah, sometimes those most difficult things to hear can be the most helpful.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have, when did you know that you wanted to write as a career? And also, so can you talk about your daily writing schedule? Do you think a writer has to do certain things every day to practice? But starting with, do you know that? Oh, no. Okay.
So I don't have a daily writing schedule anymore because I have 3 kids. But when I was first starting, and when I was, before I had kids is when I finished the whole first draft of Words on Bathroom Walls, and I was pregnant when we sold it to Random House. But my writing schedule was whenever I could squeeze in writing time. Like sometimes it would come to me in 1,000 words. Sometimes it would come to me in 2 sentences that I would hold on to and save for later. My philosophy now is that you tuck your writing schedule into your life any way that you can. And don't put pressure on yourself to have to write a certain amount every single day if you're busy doing other things. Because we've got jobs and lives and kids and schedules that are sometimes completely beyond our control. So it's like a recipe for, disaster, because you want to feel like you're moving forward with something. And then if you don't hit these goals, then you feel like I'm not a writer or I'm not moving forward. So set realistic goals for yourself for sure. Like at the end of a week, if you say, okay, I know that 1,000 words a day is going to be rough for me. So maybe if I can squeeze out 250 words a day, then when you exceed those expectations, it feels really good. So that's what I do, is I try to keep my expectations realistic, and then I try to find ways to adapt to my life. So my second novel was written maybe 65% on my phone, because I have kids, and I'd have my phone and I'm able to put something into my notes app and then send it to myself later to add to the Word doc, but I don't always have a computer or a notebook available. But my phone is my lifeline to everything, so I do have that. Probably not super healthy, but that's what I got. So that's what I use. As far as things that a writer has to do every day to practice, the only thing that I would say that you have to do every single day is think about it, even a little bit. Think about what you're going to do next time you pick up your computer, your pencil, your phone, your stick in the sand, whatever you're writing with. Just think about it. Because even experiences that you have one day are going to be great fuel for writing another day. And that's really important too, because you can't just be sitting in front of a desk all day, and you can't just be writing all day. There's a lot of life that you have to squeeze in to those spaces before you get the opportunity, before a lot of people get the opportunity to sit down with their stories.
Okay, so on the flip side, what would you say to people who don't like to write? Is there value in learning to write for everyone? I think so, but I'd love to hear your reasons why.
Yeah, I would say for people who don't like to write, I mean, I know a lot of people who don't like to write, like aren't really into creative writing or aren't really into storytelling, but there's definitely value in learning to write, because it makes you, gives you a stronger, communication skills. It makes you, more marketable in the job force. I hate to throw in like a super grown up, like, yeah, it looks good on a resume, and it's, a good skill to have for moving forward in the adult world. But writing is also just another way of, it's another extension of your expressions. So if you can write well, and if you can make yourself understood, and you don't have to be, a super academic writer, you don't have to be, and you don't have to write perfectly, but write in a way that you can make yourself understood, and I think you're golden. And that does take practice, and it does, but I think it is important, because you do need that to be able to communicate well, especially now when a lot of our stuff is being moved to this format and into, emails and even chats. Like, I know that like my husband's job, like a lot of it is via email, and a lot of it is they're using like interoffice chats and things like that. Like, you need to be able to write clearly, and a clear message is always important.
So I want to hear how you felt when you were notified, like the experience that you had when you were notified that Words on Bathroom Walls, which was your first published book, right?
Yes.
So just how that moment when you found out that that was being published, and just that experience, and then I was also going to ask, kind of just my brain just kind of, I'll get back to it. I'll remember, but I forgot. Let's start there.
Okay, so the moment I found out that I was going to be published, so what happens when you get signed with an agent? Well, okay, so what happens is, really quick, just like 5 seconds on this, is you write the book, it's in the best shape that you can possibly get it, and then you start sending it to agents, literary agents. This is if you want to go the traditional route for publishing. So you send it to agents, and they will either accept or reject or ask for more of the book so that they can read it, or they'll ask for a full manuscript. Once you get an agent who agrees and they give you the call, and you have that, oh my God moment, this is amazing, like somebody wants to represent me to publishers, that's really cool. Then they are the ones, after looking at your novel and then maybe doing some editing back and forth with you, they start subbing it out to publishers. And that is based on conversation that you have with your agent about which publishers they want to approach, and how they want the story to, how they want to market it, and how they want to, how they're going to share it with these publishers. So when my agent did that, that's getting back to your question about what it felt like. This was years of rejection and years of being in a job that I didn't want to be in. So the day that, it was a few days after my agent and I had decided that she was going to start subbing the book to publishers, and she'd already had some conversations with a few publishers who sounded interested. And I remember that I was pregnant. I was in the shower and I had my phone sitting on the counter by the sink, and it started buzzing, and I had shampoo in my hair. And it was buzzing, and it was a text message, but I got out of the shower. I'm just completely just not, picked up the phone, and she said, okay, we're getting some offers. I'm getting an offer. I want to just let you know that things are happening. So I'm so excited that I almost just dried off with all this shampoo in my hair. And I get back in, I rinse off, and then I just wait. I wait by my phone because I knew that, things were going to start happening. And later that day is when we got our first offer from Random House, and it ended up being a preempt, which means that Random House wanted it, and they wanted all the other offers off. They wanted to make an offer early so that we took the other offers off the table. So no one else had offered yet, but they wanted to close it out so that they had it. And then it ended up being a 2-book deal. So that's why my next book is coming out in December. And it's part of that original 2-book deal.
So that was gonna be part of my second question was once you're published, do you feel like it's easier then to publish? Not necessarily. Yours came with a 2-book deal, so that was already in the bag, right? But generally it's just because you have a book published doesn't mean that publishers will look at your material, they're more likely to look at it or anything like that.
It really depends from book to book and from author to author. So your agent will if your agent likes the stories that you're writing, and you usually have a conversation with your agent about what stuff you're going to dive into next and what stories you're going to start writing, so that they have input. If they say, ooh, is there another idea that you want to concentrate on right now? Because I'm not sure that one is going to be might not be able to push that one at this moment. So there are conversations like that, but I think publishers, it is definitely easier to have a publisher look at your story after you've been published, but it's not a guaranteed thing. They can always say this isn't something that we want right now. I was fortunate that it was a 2-book deal for this one, and there will be a 3rd novel later. We just haven't, nothing has been announced yet, but that will be coming soon. But it does make it easier after you've been published, but nothing is guaranteed. And I don't think anything about the process is easier. It's just, you kind of have your foot in the door.
So I'm interested in hearing about your next book, Just Our Luck. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I was just reading a summary of it, and it looks like that's another book about mental illness, about anxiety. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. So if you could share a little bit about that book with us.
Sure. It's that one is definitely an homage to my own anxiety, and I think it's the story that I would have wanted to read when I was in high school. It's the story about Leo, who is a Greek American teenager who he's living with his dad. He's lost his mom and recently his grandmother, his yaya. So he is feeling kind of lost at the moment, and his relationship with his dad is not great. And it opens with him getting into a fight at school, and because of his anxiety, and his dad's initial response is to throw him into a self-defense class, man up and deal with this the way that you need to learn how to deal with it. So the story talks about the ideas of gender norms, toxic masculinity, and then kind of evolves into other themes of slut shaming, and I'm not sorry to use the term, but but it's really a story about how he makes friends, moves through high school. instead of going into the self-defense class, he actually dives into a hot yoga class that is at the exact same time, and he gets into the teacher training hot yoga class and doesn't tell his dad about it. So his dad still thinks that he's taking the self-defense, but he's kind of blackmailed by the girl at the front desk, who is a family enemy. They have a vendetta that goes back. And she says that she won't tell anybody, or she won't tell his dad that she made the switch for him, as long as he helps her get back at her ex-boyfriend. And Leo, who's the main character, he's a brilliant photographer. He knits. He is all of these things that aren't traditionally they're not traditionally, I guess, male. I don't know, hobbies, which is silly, but when you think about it, but that's part of the story, is that you're going against things that are considered, normal, and he pushes back against that. And the story is how he deals with the anxiety and how he grows as a person, and all of the relationships in his life kind of evolve. But it does come from my own anxiety, so it's a lot of me talking about like how I learned about it.
Is this one written in letters too, or no?
This one is not written in letters. It's first person, but it's not in letters.
Cool. And you wrote, both of these books are from a teen boy male perspective, which is interesting.
Yes, they are. I have in the future, I have one that will be from a young girl's perspective, but these two are from a teenage boy perspective. So I don't know why. That's just how they came to me. So I went with it.
Cool. All right. Do we have any other questions? It looks like we don't. Is there anything else, Julia, that you wanted to talk about that we didn't address? I'm trying to think. One thing that I was thinking about, going back to Adam and the characters in the book, Adam's mom, I loved her. And when I was reading the story, I was thinking that I would want to be the type of mom that Adam's mom is, and trying to help him, and how difficult of a situation that would be for your baby to go through that, and to the social challenges involved, and just the inner challenges, and just, it almost makes me cry to think about that. And so I don't know, I don't really necessarily have a question, a nicely framed question, but I just wanted to say that I just love her. And maybe the question is that what you were thinking, that you wanted Adam's mom to be somebody that you would want to be? Where'd she come from? Yeah.
For sure. And thank you so much for that, because she was really important to me. She's still really important to me. The idea that in some YA, and I understand why it's done, it's to give characters agency, but the parents are like gone from the story. And in this particular story, I wanted them to be very much a part of it. And I wanted them to feel real and to feel invested. And I wanted the thread of love to be woven throughout. Like, even during the difficult times, and even during those dark and terrible moments, I wanted the love to be the thing that pulsed through the novel. And with the mom, with Adam's mom, it was just so important that everyone saw Adam as Adam, but also as, like, through her eyes, that's her baby. Like, she's going to prepared to do whatever it takes to protect him, to help him, to get him through, and to get him whatever he needs to be successful. And as a parent, it is, I mean, that the safety and happiness of my kids is, the most important thing. And seeing that through her eyes, and, making her a character that always went to bat for her son, like, that was very important. And it's very important, I think, for readers, and for, especially YA readers, to see parents actively dealing, even imperfectly, with difficult situations, and they're doing it through love, and doing it, with really strong intentions to do good for their kids. And Molly Parker, the person who, or the actress who played the mom in the film, actually sent me an email afterwards when I had thanked her for playing it with such, oh, I don't know, she was perfect, but just, she was amazing. And we talked about like the power of this fierce maternal love, and how it really prompts you to do just about everything. Like when they tell you about being able to lift like a car, like, and being able to like fend off a bear to protect your, like it's true. I mean, you have it in you to do these amazing, powerful things when you do it through love. And I think that was a roundabout way of answering the question. But yeah, she's very important. And that was, it was important to show character, or show parents who, love their kids with everything they have.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you for that. It wasn't a very, like I said, it wasn't a well-framed question. So, but you definitely, yeah, spoke to what I was feeling. And so thank you. And I thought it was interesting too with Adam's stepdad. Like he had a different, he came into, the situation, and that kind of posed its own challenges. I haven't seen the movie yet, but did the movie portray his stepdad a little differently than the book? Do you think? Because I feel like when I read the book, I felt like the review, like what I read from like the summary of the movie, it sounded like the stepdad had a harder time in the movie with Adam than in the book. Like the book, I kind of felt like he's doing the best that he can. He's trying. It's a difficult situation, and he's protective of the baby on the way and all these kinds of things, which is understandable. But then it seemed like what I had read about in the movie, that he was a little bit harsher or something, or didn't deal with it as well.
So with a novel, you really do get more time with the characters. And I think that the buildup in the novel makes it easier for people to see the day-to-day and the ways that Adam and Paul interact. Like even with watching TV, or even with having like those little moments, like small discussions, like you see the characters evolve. And in the film, you don't have quite as much time to see the whole, relationship evolve. So I do agree that it comes off as a little bit like, oh, this is abrupt, and oh, this is like, that's kind of harsh, and there's a little bit more fear. But I think that's only because like you're only seeing you're seeing smaller windows of the story. And I still think that Walton Goggins did the letter at the end in the film that's probably, I think, my favorite part of the story, is the letter that he writes at the end to the Archdiocese about Adam. I think that part in the film was just beautiful, and I loved the way that was handled. But yeah, there are some differences between the way that it looks in the book and the way that it looks in the film. I don't think that it changes the overall impression of Paul as a character, but it definitely is a little bit more abrupt in the film than it is in the novel.
That makes sense. I think that's probably true for most movie adaptations, that you don't have that time, so it just has a different feeling to it. Can have a different feeling. Right. Characters can have a different feeling. You mentioned there being a lot of YA books where parents are absent. Are there other trends in YA publishing that you are noticing right now? Trends that you either like or dislike?
I don't know if I don't know that there are trends that I like or dislike. I really like a lot of the books that are out there now, and I really like a lot of the variety that we have now. It feels like I just feel like it's a great time to be a writer, and it's a great time to be a reader, because all these writers are like writing such amazing things. And I mean, yeah, not trends that I either like or dislike. And why contemporary is just, it's an awesome place to be. Yeah, I can't even answer that question. It's not about trends. I think it's about writers that I'm so happy to be reading right now. I think, definitely not trends. I read, when I taught at OSHA, I remember reading Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and that was in 2017, and it was so brilliant. And I remember reading, shoot, am I going to butcher her last name? It's Casey McQuiston. Oh, no, I'm going to get it wrong. But she wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue, and that is not YA. So make sure, you know, it's so, it is a little bit steamier, so keep that in mind. But there are just a lot of great stories out there right now, and I'm just not able to even capture everything that is available to us as readers. But yeah, sorry, I don't have a great answer for that, except that I'm happy to be here and happy to be on a shelf with some of these writers.
To sum it up, there's so many great books and so little time,
Yeah,
right?
there we go. That's perfect.
All right. So unless, Julie, do you have anything else you want to add? I don't see any other questions. We've got just 3 minutes left of our hour. So if there's any final thoughts from Julia, otherwise we can wrap it up.
No final thoughts. I hope that you're all, you know, doing well given the circumstances. I hope you're all reading amazing things. I hope that if you're 18, you're registered to vote. And I hope that you're all making healthy and happy choices for yourself right now. And I know that it's so hard to have all of these things thrown at you. And it's, you know, take it one day at a time, and please take care of yourselves. And with writing, take your time with that too, and be kind to yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to hit, you know, those goals that you feel like you should have. Make goals for yourself based on the things that you think that you can do. And I'm sending you nothing but good thoughts. And that's it. That's all I got.
Well, thank you. That you said some of the things that I was going to say to close. So thank you for doing that. But for those of you out there watching that are inspired to write, and you have some time and you have some things going on in life that you want to put down on paper, head to the Right Now website for weekly prompts, and to submit samples of your writing, you can submit samples of your writing on the site, and then you could be entered into a drawing to get a copy of Words on Bathroom Walls, as well as books from the other authors participating in this workshop series. And so that's it for me. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Julia, for everything. So appreciate it. This was such a great hour. It was great to spend time with you.
Thank you. It was lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.